Well, hello, Arlene and Lee, and Cheryl and Lenore, and Rick, and Mel and Jane, and Doug, and Laurie, and Carrie, and also Trudy and John, if you hear this, and Scott and Julie, and Jennifer. Hello to all you folks back there. We're back in Manila now, and today is the 5th of August, Sunday the 5th. We arrived back here on Wednesday, just this past Wednesday, and when we got home we had a great big box of mail waiting for us. And in the box of mail, among many other things, was the cassette that Mother and Dad had made, and that many of you had talked on to us, so we listened to that right away to catch up on the news. We're making this tape on a reel-to-reel at 3 3/4 so that you can play it on your old VM tape recorder if you still have that, so you won't have to borrow someone else's. We haven't heard whether you've gotten a cassette machine yet, but we've got a lot of these old reel-to-reel tape, small ones yet, we can use up, and we don't have very many blank cassettes. We're also going to send a tape, try to make one today yet if we get time, to Mother and Dad, with which we'll have similar news and things on it as to what we're sending you. So you don't need to send this one to Mother and Dad. And we'll send theirs on cassette because that's what they want theirs on now. We'll be sending the one to Mom and Dad to Arizona, I guess, if we got their address in Arizona. I assume it's the same place again. And because I don't trust that the mail will make it in time before they leave. But if you get this before Mom and Dad leave, you can let them hear this one too. Well, first, to answer some of your questions, Arlene, on some of the letters we got. The letter you wrote on August 9, we got in Centani in good order. I don't know just when we got it. It probably took a couple weeks. Mail's a bit slow there. But in answer to one of your questions about the 4 books, the paperback children's Bible story books, yes, we got those. We mentioned that we did get the books, and those are the ones we meant. All 4 of them came in good shape and real fine. Thank you much for them. They all came in one package, and we're packed real fine. Okay, and then also the book on 4 major cults the Chaos of the Cults by Van Balen. We got that one too. It came in good shape. I guess you had packaged that one. It was all wrapped up in plastic, I believe. Okay, and then when we arrived home now, waiting for us in our big box of mail were 2 more books from you. The yearbook was in one package, and then also the titled The Spirit of the Reformed Tradition. That also came. Well, thank you much for sending all these books. Now all we got to do is find time to read them. With 3 months of work piled up, we were gone almost 3 months from here. And there's and besides all of that, there's 3 months worth of magazines and other mail sitting in a big cardboard box all waiting for us. Well, I finally got most of it sorted out from the magazines and the letters and the packages and things. Got all the packages open. But we're real thankful that you do send us these books, and we'll get time to use them. Some of them we don't have to, of course, read all the way through, like the yearbook and commentaries and things like that. They're reference book that we'll be using from time to time. Thank you, too, for the others that you'll be sending in the future. We'll certainly put them to good use. When you're out in a faraway place like this and you don't have any libraries to go to, it's kind of nice to have a good library of your own that's got good reference books and things to look up things in. Well, when we got home, we found out that our kitty cat had died just a few days before we got home. Apparently he was all right, ate his supper. He was staying next door to us with the missionaries in the apartment next door, and one night in the evening he went out to look for him to try to call him in, and there he was laying dead. They don't know what happened. They didn't find any marks at any of the dogs that hurt him or anything like that. Well, Rascal was in good shape, and Rascal's our dog, and real happy to see us. Just licked us all over and was so happy to see us. And he's around here and enjoying it. Looks real good. Well, we certainly enjoyed our trip. We saw quite a bit more of the world, different areas and different kinds of mission work. Actually, we spent a lot of time working there at Centani fixing a lot of radios. I haven't counted up how many I fixed altogether, but I think I probably fixed every one of the airplanes, every one of the 10 airplanes. I've worked on almost all the radios in every one of them, and the antenna systems, revamped a lot of them, and then of the ground radios, I must have fixed at least half of them. There's probably about 90 of them altogether, and I'd guess I probably fixed about 40 or so. I've got record of it all, but I haven't had time to organize it all and add it all up. I got to make a complete report on it, so I'll have to do that one of these days. But boy, we really kept busy there, and when we left, there were still radios coming in to be repaired. They could keep, they need more than one full-time radio man. They could use two of them and keep them going full-time to really keep things caught up and in good shape. I don't know how they got along without any. I guess just everything broke down and got way behind. Hey, Rick, it was real good to hear you talking to us on the tape, and it was real interesting to hear from you what's been going on recently. Several months ago, of course, we heard that you made profession of faith, and we were real happy to hear that, and then that you were going to go on the swim team, and boy, we were really excited to hear that you were going on that, because that really gives you a taste to see what it's like and a bit of mission work of sorts, and to see what it's like to share your faith with someone else that really hasn't been brought up in the same kind of background that you've had in church all the time, and what a difference it is to some of these people. So it was real interesting to hear your report of what you did, and glad to hear you enjoyed it, and hope that you'll have a chance to help in some area like that again. Well, Rick, now don't get worried about the draft and about just because you've got a low number there in the lottery and that they'll be calling you in a short time. You know, the Army may be something, you may enjoy it. It may be something really worthwhile. In fact, if you go right away, you can get it over with, and then you can plan for what you're going to do for college and won't have to be interrupted and so. So I wouldn't worry about it, and I'd just go right away and get it over with. And while you're there in the Army, you can probably do a lot of interesting things. They may put you to some school, you may learn some kind of trade or something worthwhile, and then you may be able to have a chance to travel and see different parts of the world. And I'd sure jump at it if you have a chance to travel and see other parts of the world. You might even get out this way, for all we know. And that'd give you a real good taste of what other parts of the world and how other people live and things like that. Then the Army itself isn't too bad of an experience. It may be a little rough, and they may make you discipline yourself on some things a lot, but you'll see how some other fellows are, and you being a Christian, you'll have an opportunity to witness to them and compare that you've really got something worthwhile in your life that they don't. Then, too, when you're in the Army, you might have lots of chance to think and decide really what you want to do with the rest of your life, what you want to study for in school and what you want to become. And during that time, and then when you get out, you really have something to work for if you know what you're going to do, because it's not very good going to college and not knowing what you want to be. You know, when I went to college to Calvin, I took engineering, but I wasn't even sure I wanted to be an engineer, so I didn't really do very good in school, not as good as I could have, and sort of fooled around and finally quit and went to work for myself and thought I wanted to have my own business. And so, well, boy, if I had to do it over again, I would find out what the Lord wanted me to be doing. If He wanted me to be a missionary or a businessman or a teacher or whatever it was, and then really go to work and learn everything I can in school. So maybe during the time when you're in the Army, you'll get decided definitely what you want to be in life and what you want to do, and then when you get out, you can start working on it. So don't worry about that Army and that low draft number. Just take it in your stride and go to it and make the best out of it. Make the government teach you something, and do the best you can on seeing the government's going to be supporting and feeding you for a while. Well, in a way, it was real good to get back here to the Philippines. We just went to church again for the first time this morning. I had a real warm welcome from all our old friends and so. Lots of people, of course, we haven't seen for 3 months, and went to choir practice again after church. Are anxious to have us back in the choir and so. By the way, Beth Rainey and her 4 children are back here now in the Philippines. They arrived while we were gone, and she is getting quite busy already here. She's working part-time as school nurse for the missionary school, the Faith Academy, for the missionary kids school, and also she's doing some language study part-time along with it on the local language here, Tagalog, and trying to finish some of that. She and George had language study. We're the only ones of RMAF here that's had an opportunity to have language study, so she's going to continue on it and see if she can't get fluent in a local language. Well, we sure like to too, so we could get to converse better with the people, because they don't always understand English near as well as they do their own. But it doesn't look like MAF's going to give us a chance here unless we go on our own, but then it's real hard to do along with a heavy workload. We got lots of work to catch up on now. And it isn't too long before we're supposed to go on furlough, so we got to start thinking about that already, what stuff we're going to sell and what keep and what store and who knows what. So we're going to be pretty busy for a while. By the way, you're all anxious. You say you're all anxious for us to come home for furlough. Well, don't get your heart set on us coming like first thing in March or April, because there's chances are we won't go after exactly 4 years. There's a good chance we'll stay here until Hutchins get back, and they won't get back until after the school year in the States lets out, because they've got kids in school in the States. So chances are we'll have to stay here to handle the business till they get back, and then they've already mentioned in passing in Centani and West Erie, and they thought the program manager would like to have us come through there again on our way home for furlough. In other words, go from here back to West Erie and spend maybe a month or two there in West Erie and to get them caught up on radio work again, unless they get somebody full-time by then, and before we go home on furlough. So, well, it'll be sometime next year, we assume, sometime, but I don't think it'll be first thing in the spring, either late spring or summer or maybe even fall before we're home. So don't plan on anything definite until we find out, and we probably won't find out for several months yet what's going to happen. Well, now we'll fill you in on some more of the things that happened while we were in Indonesia and about our return trip and so. You heard the other tape, so you know pretty much up to about there. Well, the next thing of interest or excitement that happened is Saturday afternoon on about the 17th of July. We had gone back to the radio shop, and he'd come with me. Usually we don't work Saturday afternoons, but I wanted to fix up a shortwave radio for the people whose house we were staying in, and so I could use a shortwave radio to listen to Far East Broadcasting and Back to God and things like that. And so I took it down to the radio shop, and we were in there in the afternoon. Anita was with me because I thought, just take a half an hour, and she'd come down, and then and after that we were going to play tennis or go swimming or something afterwards. And about 2 o'clock, we heard someone came in, and they said that one of the planes was missing, or actually overdue, and that some of the guys were going to go out and search for it, start looking for it. What had happened is Martin Cayley, one single fellow who was the pilot that was there about 3 months in Indonesia, had taken off on his second flight of the day. Earlier in the morning, he had gone into one of the stations in the interior, about an hour and a quarter flight each way, in and out, and then come back, and then was going to go in for the second flight. In fact, I talked to him about 12:30, just before I went home for lunch, and about his airplane, because part of the trail antenna had been broken off, and I found the parts for him and said, well, we ought to fix that. But he said, well, he wanted to hurry up to get back in because he was had been invited into this station by the missionary for lunch, and he wanted to go right away. And he says, well, the fixed antenna is working fine. He didn't need trail antenna, so he would fix it when he got back. So I set out the parts for him, and he left. In fact, I think I was the last one that talked to him there at Centani before he left, and I went home to eat lunch about 12:30, and then we came back. But they said he was 10 minutes out from this same place he was going in and reported, but he never showed up at the place. The weather wasn't real bad, just the normal buildups over the mountains in there. So they went out with one plane and started looking, and didn't find anything Saturday afternoon. They went out with the Aero Commander and flew around there, and one of the other planes that's based interior went out and started looking. But couldn't do a whole lot of looking because the clouds were down quite low. And so the next morning, Sunday morning early, in fact that evening before, we were all of pilots and fellows at MAF and wives were called together, and we organized a search. And then Sunday morning I rode in with, in the Aero Commander into one of the interior bases and picked up another plane with one of the guys and rode along with him as an observer and helped in the search. Sunday morning we were able to search about 2 hours and didn't find anything. The weather again closed in again, and then late Sunday afternoon we searched some more. Still didn't find anything. Altogether there were 7 airplanes there searching and 2 helicopters. The helicopters belonged to Arizona Helicopters that were actually being used by Kennecott Mining Company, who was doing some prospecting for copper and other minerals there in the interior West Irian. We knew the helicopter pilots and crew quite well because we let them use the MAF hangar to assemble the helicopters just a month or two before. In fact, I'd repaired one of their radios for them so that they could get going and get on their work. But anyhow, didn't find anything Sunday, nothing. And so, but then Sunday evening, as we were all in that interior base, there were about 22 of us all on the search party. I was in there. Anita was still back at Centani. But then we heard over the radio, one of the mission stations nearby, that there was a report that one of the Donnie people, or the native people from from about a day's walk away, said that he had talked to someone that had seen the plane come down and crash, and that the pilot was alive and walking around and had a broken arm. And said it was up the valley where that mission station was, about a day's walk. So our hopes were really up high then after that. So we planned what we'd do the next morning, Monday morning, we'd start concentrating a search on that valley. I went in with one of the Cessna planes with Jerry Reeder, one of our pilots, and we flew up high over it. The weather was quite a bit better that morning for a while. And one of the helicopters went down low and started searching up that valley. And we weren't searching, about a half hour, and the helicopter spotted the wreckage. Up in a narrow valley with real high trees and quite steep at about a height of about 8,600 feet elevation. We couldn't hardly see it from the plane we were above it. In fact, the helicopter had a circle to show us where it was, and we finally did spot a piece of the tail, a white piece of the tail, way up in the top of one of the trees. The trees were over 150 foot high, and it was a real narrow canyon. There was no place nearby for the helicopter to land at all, so went back and to the mission station for further planning, and they decided to send in a couple of experienced trekkers, people that were experienced climbing up and down and living overnight in the mountains along with camping equipment. They sent in Dr. Wright, who was one of the Baptist missionary doctors there, and also Dave Heisington, our program manager there, and then two of the geologists from Kennecott that were used to hiking and staying overnight. So that afternoon, what they did is they went up there, the two Kennecott men, they jumped out of the helicopter. The helicopter hovered about 5 feet above the ground, and then they slashed down the brush and so on a ridge, which was about 1,000 feet higher than above the site of the wreckage, and they slashed a place for the helicopter to land, and the helicopter could land after a while and brought up the other three fellows. The helicopter could only take one or two persons at a time because of the high elevation. It couldn't hardly operate safely at that elevation. The same day, Monday, one of the geologists, they hiked down to the wreckage, and they carried a trail radio with them, and when they arrived at the wreckage, they radioed back to us that Martin had died on impact. He was still in the plane and had died right when it crashed, and it crashed probably at full power going right into the mountain. So the story we had heard was partly right. If it hadn't been for the natives saying it was up that valley, we probably would have never found it because it was very hard to see from the air. But the other part, that the pilot walking around, was not true. Of course, he had heard it second or third hand, and the stories change as they go around. Well, the four of them stayed overnight then up on the ridge there, and then the next morning, Dave and the doctor went down, and the doctor looked him over, and because of the difficulty of getting there and the danger of the helicopter finding out, they decided not to take the body out. They buried it right there at the wreckage. So another one of our young pilots, he was younger than I was, and had just been there 3 months, had been to language school before for a few months in Bandung. Another one was taken. We sometimes wonder why, but we know it's the Lord's will, and that's how He wants. He'll have it happen how He wants it.
The Sunday night that Len was in Interior to help on the search, I was by myself in one of the missionary homes, the Christian Missionary Alliance place. They were having a conference in the interior, and we were kind of watching their house. It's up the hill from our MAF base about a mile, and I was in this big house by myself. And that Sunday night, about 1:30, I felt something sort of pulling on my blankets, and I wasn't sleeping. I'm kind of a light sleeper, especially when Len's gone. And I looked around, and there was a man standing there trying to get in bed with me. He was stark naked, didn't have any clothes on. And I just screamed and screamed and screamed and looked around, and I sort of sat up. And when I sat up, he ran, and I got up and ran after him. And I grabbed a great big tall statue on the way out, and I was going to hit him with it. But by the time I got close to him, while he was gone, I couldn't even see him anymore. But the rest of the night, I stayed up in the chair with a big butcher knife in my lap with the light on, and hoping that he wouldn't come back. But Lord was with me, and I'm real thankful that he didn't even get to touch me after all that. And I was glad that he didn't let anything else happen to me.